Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Baker's Journal Roundtable. It's really a way of trying to figure out how is your bakery or any bakery coping with social distancing measures and the aftermath of COVID-19. We're trying to figure out what bakeries or anyone in the food industry really is doing to thrive, not just survive, but to take the next steps, not just with the slow opening of phase one, phase two, but try to find other ways and solutions. So with me today, we have experts in various fields of the food industry. I have Paul Hetherington, the CEO and the president of the Baking Association of Canada, the BAC. I have Carly Peroff of the New Business Development Offices at Olympic Foods. I have Bonnie Cable, CPA and CGA. She's a tax and governmental funding expert. And I have Cindy Taylor, the owner and chief baker of Kitchen Smidgen. And together we're going to take a look at what we can do to try to find solutions. So my first question is, it's going to be a focus for Mr. Paul Hetherington. What do you feel is the most important issue to come from the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, first of all, good morning, Naomi,
Good
and
morning.
our fellow panelists. Our takeaway from what's happened over the last 3 months, quite frankly, is how unprepared we were for the pandemic. The early weeks of the pandemic, it really was a situation of striving to ensure the food supply could remain open. And what is really surprising out of that is, I'd like to say I'm old enough to remember we went through SARS here in Ontario. And there was no end of consultations that were resulted after the SARS event had diminished. And there were plenty of documents written about pandemic planning, emergency preparedness, etc. And all those learnings seems to have been forgotten. So literally in the early months, early weeks of the pandemic, we were finding ourselves in a situation of, just give you an example, when the federal government announced they're closing the border, the food industry and others had to rise up and say, well, wait a minute, if you shut the border, you are shutting off, in the case of finished foods, about 30 or 40% of finished foods coming into the country, and then much larger and another percentage of ingredients, etc. You're literally going to shut down the food supply if that happened. Mm-hmm. And then the next step was, okay, fine, we'll allow the trucks in, but the truckers must self-isolate for 2 weeks. Well, again, we're into a situation of, if you do that, you're not going to have any truckers, which means you're not going to have any ingredients and or finished foods coming to the country. And that's just one example of what we were faced in the early weeks of the pandemic. Something as simple as trying to get agreement on what is an essential business. There seemed to be an understanding, okay, fine, bakeries are essential business. They produce breads and other baked goods. But the understanding didn't go back into the supply chain about, well, that means then your technical support to keep your machinery operating. Those are essential businesses. Your packaging supplier is an essential business. Mm-hmm. So literally we were dealing with that, those type of situations. And compounding that was we were dealing with 3 levels of government. We had the federal government at one level, of course, we had the provinces at another level. And then we were actually having municipal issues where, in the case of some of the companies, they were being told to shut down by the municipalities, and the companies then having to explain, well, no, wait a minute, we are an essential business because we are contributing to keeping the food supply open. Mm-hmm. So it was a very challenging situation. So, the major takeaway I have and we have from that experience is we didn't learn anything from SARS. Mm-hmm. We lacked the type of coordination that one would have thought of to make the system far more efficient. And we didn't have that ready, to go emergency plan to pull off the shelf and dust it off and say, okay, day one, we do this in order to keep the food supply open.
And what did you learn from this pandemic? Has this one given you any sort of crisis management planning or any steps that you would recommend bakeries to take from this point on?
Well, I think the reality is it's an eye opener for probably many people.
Hmm.
Um, the emergency preparedness had been spoken about a lot. I mean, some depending what regions of the country you're in, you would have experienced them in the past. Everything from 15 years ago or 20 years ago was we had the blackout here in
Hmm.
the east part of Canada, the ice storms in Quebec, even significant weather events.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
think it's brought a whole new light to the need for businesses to look at this in a serious fashion,
Hmm.
understand what it might mean to their business. If we have disruptions like we've had, and also understanding what mechanisms do they have to reach out to their consumers and their customers in order to be able to communicate. Because I think that's one of the key learnings that's come across this is the need to communicate.
Got it. So my next question will be for Carly Peroff of New Business Development at Olympic Foods. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I'm going to ask much the same question. How do you feel
Okay.
that the pandemic has affected your business, and what have you learned from this?
Yeah, so a lot like what Paul was saying, we're a distributor, so bringing in food from the US and around the world was really important to us to keep our supply chain moving for our customers. A lot of the time, what we found was there was an issue with the manufacturers, for instance. So there were certain items that were really key that our business to keep our business running because that's where the demand was for the consumer. So for instance, yeast was a big one and retail flour.
Hmm.
So those were the two biggest ones that were moving, and we had to act really quickly. And as Paul said, we weren't ready for what was about to happen. So we had to, get our stages done to make sure that everything was healthy and safe for our employees as well, while trying to get this product in for our consumers who were, we also work with independent grocers and groceries as well. So it was really just trying to do the best that we could to act as quickly as we could to get things moving. But what the issues that we ran into were things like manufacturers didn't have the packaging because, for instance, packaging came from Italy, and Italy was completely shut down. So it was really just reaching out and partnering with the people that we've been partnering with for such a long time to make things happen as quick as possible, so that we were able to keep moving and keep our business moving.
Now, Paul had brought up an interesting question, which was about communication. How
Mm-hmm.
do you reach out to your partners? How did that change from, say, the ways you previously reached out?
I would say there wasn't a big shift in that. It was more just like sense of urgency, just picking up the phone rather than waiting for an email, to be honest with you, and reaching out to saying, this is where we're at, this is what we're looking for, and what can you do to help us to help our consumers be where they need to be with the product. And they would also reach out to us as well through phone and just say, these are the items that we need to move because in the food industry, shelf life is so important. Expired product happens and it happens quickly. So we had to make sure that, these businesses that weren't open, unfortunately, couldn't stay open. Well, they weren't buying the product as much. So they were reaching out to us and saying, we have all this leftover product. And we were saying, well, we also have it. So it was just really teaming up that way, and just really creating a sense of urgency to make sure that we had a plan.
Got it. And I guess my question is, do you now have a crisis management plan in place?
Yeah, so we created 3 stages. Stage 1, 2, and 3 for how we were going to shift into the pandemic, and then we have 3 stages about how we're going to open back up entirely with it going on, with us moving back into more businesses opening. So we have that in writing now, and we we have some steps and procedures that we feel really worked well for us, and things that maybe we could have done better.
Okay, what did you learn out of it? For instance, what do you think you could have done better? If heaven forbid, another pandemic comes along, what would you think you'll be ready for next time?
I really just think for us, it was, I have some notes here, just really decision making. So that communication piece. So not only communicating with our vendors, but also communicating more with our customers to
Hmm.
find out. We created a list right off the bat, we spoke with each of our customers and we said, you know, are you opened or are you closed? And it kind of gave us a good idea for product quantity as well, bringing that in. So just that communication piece, we had a lot of sales reps that we learned that were actually in with their bakeries trying to help them create a plan to stay open. So we learned a lot from that, and I think that's something that we want to keep going and kind of take with us for the next time.
Got it. All right. And my next question is directed to Cindy Taylor, the owner and chief baker of Kitchen Smidgen. Good morning.
Hi, Naomi. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
All right. Now, obviously, as a baker, your viewpoint's going to be a little different, but will definitely be a part of the experience of most of our readers. Now, you've done something very interesting in trying to cope with the pandemic. You've teamed up with other industries that were not necessarily other bakeries. Would you like to talk a little bit about how you kept your business running by making these partnerships?
Sure. So initially, we pretty much shut down right away. So March 20th, the actual bake shop was closed. So we had to kind of come up with a game plan on obviously how to make some revenue. So a couple things we did, and St. Mary's, just to give you a background, is a very, very small town, tight community. So, and I was involved in the business BIA, so the Better Improvement Association of Downtown St. Mary's. So that allowed me to have a very close contact with several of the other business owners. So one of the first things I did was I teamed up with the flower shop in town, who obviously has the capability of delivering to porches, homes. And with every flower delivery that was ordered, you received 4 cookies with your order. So that was our sort of our first tie-in. Our second tie-in was with it's actually a cheese shop in town that does prepaid or pre-made meals as well, like lunches and those sort of things. So I teamed up with her, and she delivered meals to all over St. Mary's, and my portion was I offered bread and a dessert as part of that program. The one thing that was hugely successful that we did was we ran a Mother's Day bundle. And within that bundle, and don't get me wrong, it was a royal pain in the ass to organize, because there was 8 other businesses that participated, and they all gave an item to this Mother's Day bundle. I organized it. My husband sort of put it all together, and we hand delivered all of those Mother's Day bundles. But it was amazing because you had so many businesses being able to benefit from sort of one easy purchase, and the community was incredible. I mean, I sold out of them. We did 110 of them, and we couldn't produce any more, actually. So it was a huge success. So it just showed you how important it was to really work within the community to sort of find a brighter side of the pandemic and how to make some money in the meantime.
That's definitely a challenge because, I'd like to applaud you for finding a festival, working with tie-ins, and above all, coordinating with other industries to keep everyone aloft, not just your own industry. And, what I thought was really striking was that everyone sort of came together, where a lot of other industries might think, I'm on my own island. I will not connect with another one. Now, this leads to another question. Since your company lives up to its name in terms of space, it is a small working space, and companies such as Olympic Foods and certainly the office of the BAC has a lot more working space. So the implementation of social distancing is going to be very different for each of those different offices. So my next question, I'll go back to Mr. Paul Hetherington. How do you maneuver the office? Have you done anything to implement social distancing or PPE for anyone in the workspace?
Yes, a lot of that. Matter of fact, we're still working remotely. The team is still working from home for the most part. We're doing general maintenance coming into the office, and I tend to like to do the webinars from the office rather than from my son's old bedroom, which still has hockey players wallpaper, so it doesn't have the same image. But certainly, when we do start up, and we haven't finalized that decision yet, we're fortunate. We only have a small team, so 4 people in the office would be the normal allotment. But what we're going to do is 2 people at a time.
Got it.
There will be social distancing. Matter of fact, there's signs up all over the office, and the office is 1,500 square feet. I think we have 10 signs that are up already reminding people about their social distancing. The team has been purchased reusable masks, hand sanitizer, etc. So we also have protocols that we've developed for interaction in the office, and quite frankly, within the building.
Okay.
So,
And oh yes.
So there is protocols are in place, but we're still working generally remotely from the office.
Got it. And for Carly Paroff of New Business Development at Olympic Foods, how has this changed? I mean, obviously as a food supplier, there may be some differences in, I guess, I don't know if decontamination would be an issue, or do you just let things sit? How has COVID-19 control guidelines affected your industry?
Yeah, so we have about 100 employees at our building. So we've really had to make quick decisions in order to make sure everything was safe and healthy for everybody. So we actually had to go down. We had to shrink our team down a bit over this time. So we have 1 person on order desk. So each space basically has 1 person in it at each time. And then a lot of us work from home. So I'm working from home. I'm a sales representative. So I do the order desk, I'm doing marketing, I'm sales rep. So I took on a lot of different roles, and I'm doing it all from home because I was able to do that. And then the rest of our sales team is rotating on order desk as well, just to help out. The biggest challenge was in the warehouse. So just because everybody is so close, so we had to make sure that we were implementing social distancing and physical distancing. The team was wearing gloves and masks at the start of it because we weren't really sure what to do. They were like, wear a mask, don't wear a mask, gloves. And it was, we decided just to go with wear gloves, wear a mask. All of our drivers did as well. One thing that we didn't change our drivers bringing the product into the bakery. We found that was really important, not only for customer service, but we felt that it was still safe for them to go down and drop the product off, just to really help out our customers rather than just leaving it on the sidewalk. So that was a big part of something that we decided to keep at Olympic, just to really focus on our customers again, because they're also going through a tough time with all of this. So we just wanted to make sure that they knew that we were there to help them in any way that we could. So we've definitely had a lot of changes, more pickups, a lot more pickups from customers as well, and just really making sure that the signage is up. There's hand sanitizer. As hard as that was to get at one point, we were able to get some. And yeah, we haven't gone back to the office, all of us yet, but one of the new rules is everyone that was working internally in the office is getting we've asked them to get a COVID test done, so that we feel more comfortable coming back into the office, especially myself. I have a child, she's only 2.5, so I like to make sure that everything's safe before I go back in.
Got it. And did you provide any incentives to either keep or to draw in new clients?
We use social media a lot. So that was a big one. Just really continuing to promote the products that were big items. So yeast and retail flour, barbecue season, just really trying to draw in those new customers. But at the end of the day, we've been around for so long that I feel like we did have a lot of old customers come back to us because maybe they weren't able to find it anywhere else, or they were tired of running out to the store because the stores were empty. So we were able to get more customers that were doing pickup, which was nice to see, because we always like to be able to draw in all different types of customers, not just the industrial.
Got it. And now, speaking of, I guess, PPE and I suppose new costs that would certainly come to offices, I will bring in Ms. Bonnie Cable, who is the CPA and CGA and tax government funding expert. Silly but strangely relevant question. Is there any sort of rebate an office or an industry could get for being reimbursed for the cost of PPE or more space in order to facilitate social distancing? Pardon me, not COVID, any social distancing.
That's a great question. There's a fund that just opened called the Emergency Processors Fund. It's a $7.5 million program that opened June 6th, and it's just for food processors.
Okay.
So there are two streams to this program, and the first stream will pay 50% of the cost of non-disposable PPE and disposable PPE. And that will cover the time frame of March 15th, so it's retroactive to March 15th, all the way to September 30th. And that would include body temperature screening, fever detection systems, washing stations if a company wants to put one in, workstation dividers, protective barriers, full and half face piece respirators, goggles, face shields, installation of sanitation stations, any sanitation that's taking place. We know a lot more of that's going on. Protective barriers, adjustments to current processes and manufacturing lines to accommodate social distancing. So that's just the first stream, and that's 50% of the costs that are incurred. Now the second stream is it's a tax-free, it's an interest-free loan, and that's up to $5 million, and that is for activities associated with improvements or modernization of food processing and manufacturing facilities to manage surplus stock or increased production, or that are operating at less than full capacity or closed due to COVID. So if if these plants want to modernize, if they want to put in new lines, if they've had to rent or purchase any kind of bins for storage or any kind of storage facility because they haven't been able to sell product, all of that is covered.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for this information. My next question will be directed to Paul Hetherington. Now, a lot of bakeries they feel that they're in flux. They're not sure if they're partially open, completely open. They don't know when their business will be allowed to fully open. So my question is, as you mentioned earlier, there isn't a great deal of clear information and no, I guess you would say, no real crisis plan that's been handed from the top down. What or how can professional associations provide information or advocate on behalf of bakeries?
Yeah, that's been the challenge. You've hit the nail on the head, Naomi. And just to something as simple as, what are our reopening criteria? Has been an ask we've been making, and the answer comes back differently depending on who you ask. There are some federal criteria, but they're very broad. That's coming out of the Public Health Agency. But again, you've got 3 jurisdictions that are involved in many of these decisions. Well, certainly you have the feds and the provinces, and different provinces are ahead, are further along in their reopenings than others. And you just look at, as example, British Columbia is, their restaurants are open for in-store dining, which of course is not something that's available here in Ontario. So the challenge has been able to trying to find that type of clarification and information that we can convey to the bakers. And because of the wide variation of jurisdictions, as well as the different levels of who are further advanced in the openings, that's been very problematic. And I think the reality is going to continue to be problematic. And it'll be very much, my words to most of the people listening would be, you're going to have to rely on your local public health for clarification with regards to the criteria for opening, what the restrictions might be, and follow that advice rather than any one single document.
Got it. And I guess it comes down to the next question, which I will direct to Bonnie Cable. What sort of financial emergency relief funding? It's changed radically from March to April to May. We're getting updates, I wouldn't say daily, but certainly frequently enough to cause minor confusion. What, aside from the previously mentioned emergency process fund, can a bakery do to try to recuperate some lost funds?
Okay, so we've got a number of programs, and you're right, the programs do keep changing. So I guess the first one would be the Canadian Emergency Bank Account Fund, which is up to $40,000. So the most recent announcement, this is the third iteration of the program, happened on Thursday. And now any bakery from $0 in salaries to 1.5 million can now access this $40,000 bank loan that would definitely help with their cash flow. The next program most widely used would be the 75% wage subsidy. So if wages have dipped more than 30% year over year for March, April, May, June, July, and August, businesses are entitled to a 75% wage subsidy. If sales have been good and your wages haven't dipped 30%, then you're entitled to a 10% wage subsidy. And that would be for a period of about April to about mid-June. And that is to offset the cost of things like buying PPE, right? Every business has had to change to accommodate for COVID. And that 10% wage subsidy is to handle those added costs. And I guess the final item here would be the Canadian Emergency Commercial Rent Assistance Program. So for businesses where their sales have dipped 70% for April, May, and June, they're entitled to a 75% relief on their rent. And you would need to contact your landlord in order to take advantage of that.
Okay. Oh, are there any others? Sorry, I'm not sure if I cut you off.
I'm going to mention one more program. It's not really part of the COVID program, but I think it is relevant. It's just it's a hiring grant. So what we're seeing, speaking of businesses, is on every given day, most businesses have 10% of their workforce away, and that's because employees are scared of COVID or they're self-quarantining. So companies are needing to hire more staff. So if you're going to hire new staff, there is a hiring grant, and it's up to $6,000 per new hire that requires on-the-job training available. And that's whether or not the employee works out. So I think that's a great program to be aware of, and that could be for anybody new that you have coming in.
That is a crucial one to follow up on for bakeries, for certain. Now, this one is the question for Cindy Taylor, the owner and chief baker of Kitchen Smidgen. How did you, I guess, announce your teaming up with other florists or other companies? What did you use as a resource to advertise or promote your wares and your initiatives?
So we're very heavily dependent on social media. So most of the things we do from an advertising standpoint is done via Facebook and Instagram. Now, we did have the town of St. Mary's updated their website, and they added a whole business directory to their site, which was very helpful. I mean, I also have done major pushes on social media to help. So when we were completely shut down for almost 3 weeks, not offering any goods whatsoever, to stay relevant and to hopefully stay in our customers' top of mind, my husband and I did every morning tea and coffee with Cindy and Scott. And we kind of just talked about all the issues of the day. We talked about stupid things like what movie we watched the night before. Because you have to keep in mind our customer base is so small, and they're very dedicated customers. So part of the experience of coming to our shop is for them to interact with my husband and myself. I mean, it's just, as Naomi knows, it's just me and my husband. It couldn't be any more typical of a mom and pop shop. So we just wanted to keep customers in the loop on what was going on. The other thing that was very successful is I ran a in-home virtual baking contest. That was huge. I mean, I got about an extra 500 followers just from running the contest. And again, as we know, so many people are doing home baking now. It was a great way to get, again, my whole customer base involved.
That is such a great idea. I love the idea of engaging your clients with extraneous things, not necessarily bakery oriented, but as you mentioned it, everyone has a life outside of business. So people like to connect with hobbies or similar interests. Now, I have a question actually for Bonnie Cable. Now, a lot of bakeries are somewhat uncertain of the hows and wheres of applying. Do you get any questions where bakers feel overwhelmed when it comes to application? Where would they start?
All the time. I would say that they're overwhelmed. I find that accountants within bakeries or any business, they're overwhelmed. And it's really, I guess, finding a good source for yourself in order where to get information and stay on top of it. Like I said, it seems like the government is readjusting as this pandemic continues. And there's changes that seem to be coming out. So it's important to find a source and that the communication is there, that you feel that this is somebody that you can communicate with and deal with. What has really been interesting for me is some bigger companies that I deal with, the controllers that I'm dealing with, we're passing them information, and they don't feel comfortable going to their accounting firm and getting this information. They would rather come to AKR to get this information, and that's a little shocking that you're dealing with somebody as important as an external accounting firm, but the relationship isn't there, and it needs to be. So whatever source that you find that you're comfortable with, you need to be able to communicate with them. I think that's important.
Now, what would an accountant need to know in order to make the process for getting a loan or a grant as seamless as possible?
They would just have to be on top of it, right? They would just really, really need to be on top of it. Things like the emergency processing fund that we're talking about, that's really not the type of expertise that an accounting firm would have. They would know more of the bigger COVID federal government related programs that are out there. For something like the Canadian Emergency, the Emergency Processors Fund, and there have been a couple of smaller funds that have already opened and closed that are directly for the food industry. They would need to come to a grant funding company like ourselves. That's, I think, the only source that they'd have for that kind of information.
Yeah, it certainly is an issue for it. And I guess, let me see, another question, I guess this one is for Carly. How do you feel, was the most effective outside of telephone for communicating? Do you have a checklist that you would recommend other food industries to have when communicating a crisis?
Yeah, so for the most part, other than telephone, it would be just through email. So just making sure that we have sales reps we have 14 sales reps that go into different regions and go into see our bakeries each week. So just making sure, since we weren't able to do that, just really picking up the phone calling, letting them know what's going on our end, communicating through our monthly, like we have a flyer that goes out each month with our vendors. We have vendor workshops that we're doing online as well. So just really making sure that they know where we stand, but also where our vendors are standing as well, because we are the middleman as a distributor. We are that person that's communicating for both ends of it, for our customer and for our vendors as well. So really, each rep had their own way of doing it. I personally just went through and had a call list of all my customers. I called them each week, emailed them. Once in a while, I would have to drop off product for them, and just really just being there so they know that we're there to support them, and then sending them online workshops with our vendors so that they can bake and learn new product, and just really keep at it, not to feel like this is really dragging us down as an industry, but to keep up the motivation and the creativity that they all have, and to make sure that they know that there's more positive that can also come from this as well.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for your fantastic advice. What I'm going to do is provide a little recap of this roundtable, which yielded some really wonderful answers. The first thing that I think we all learned from both Carly and Cindy was that you need to persevere and you need to keep at it, keep your chin up. Secondly, you need to keep on top of mind. So constant promotion, constant communication, if not by email or phone, as Cindy found, using social media certainly keeps your company top of mind for any consumer. We've also learned that regardless of your industry, whether you're providing ingredients, whether you're an association, or whether you're a bakery, you absolutely need to have some sort of crisis management plan in case there is another wave of a pandemic or another different sort of pandemic. We need to have a plan of action, how to isolate, how to keep business going, what to do to keep, I guess, to maintain any sort of crisis, but keep your cash flow going. And for those who are trying to recuperate funds, make sure that you do have a trusted financial source. Make sure that you are communicating openly with your accountant or your financial planner, or maybe even a chat with your bank to make sure that you can get or apply for your funds in the most accurate way. Now, I just would like to say thank you to everyone, in no order in particular. Thank you to Cindy Taylor, the owner and chief baker of Kitchen Smidgen, Carly Peroff of New Business Development at Olympic Foods, Paul Hetherington, the CEO and President of the Baking Association of Canada, and Bonnie Cable, CPA and CGA. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time.
Oh, you're welcome.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.